I find the concept of apocalyptic superhero stories really enticing, even if the majority are a little ridiculous. There's the infamous Spider-Man Reign comic where Mary Jane got cancer from Peter's radioactive the very 2000s Marvel Zombies comics, the maybe too out there Old Man Logan by Mark Millar, and to a degree temporary timeline stories like that of DC's Flashpoint. Alternate timeline stories offer a sense of finality and a daringly original direction for famous characters, and as we see them become the basis for movie adaptations time and again, they often leave a lasting impression on the character's image. The most notable is, of course, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which follows an aged Bruce Wayne as he steps out of retirement to combat a hellish Gotham City, overrun with crime during his absence. It was a pioneering effort in moving comics into darker, more grounded territory. Problem is, this more realistic work also carried a thesis that in order to repair society's moral fabric, we need a brutal, unforgiving response to crime to prevent degeneracy. The Dark Knight Returns sees Batman revel in causing pain. At one point, he breaks out a tank-like Batmobile, which he mentions was modified to deal with riots years before. He uses language that compares his vigilantism to warfare, and his villains are all able to unleash terror due to soft-on-crime policy and ineffective therapy, rather than Batman's no-nonsense concussion method. Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face, is said to have made a full psychiatric recovery, partially empowered by surgery to restore his scarred face. But after new murders resembling the old Two-Face begin to pop up, Batman discovers that Harvey is in fact bound to return to his violent nature. A rotating cast of supervillains are an essential part of the genre, but in taking the concept to the real world, Miller implies that some criminals are innately corrupted, that for some, the idea of reintegration is a pipe dream, and that violent offenders must either be locked away from the general public or eliminated through force. Even the more sympathetic of them, like Harvey Dent, who became a criminal through tragic circumstances. Likewise, the Joker, having long receded into a docile state, is given a release. However, at the sight of Batman's reemergence, so too does his true violent self return. And he plays the part of the reformed criminal right up until he can kill again, at which point Batman makes the decision to remove him permanently, snapping his neck to paralyze him until the Joker somehow kills himself to fully break Batman's rule against killing. The primary antagonists, the Mutant Gang, were named as a mocking reference to the more left-leaning principles of the X-Men. They speak in a slang dialect reminiscent of Super Boo before he absorbs Piccolo and learns how to use articles. And yes, that is obviously racial coding, combined with their grotesque appearance as queer code. The gang is presented as the product of a broken society. Gotham is overtaken by crime because of soft-palmed liberals doing nothing to correct it. Even the new Robin is a teenager yearning for direction under the negligence of hippy-dippy parents. Jim Gordon shoots a teenager in an illustration of every NRA member's fantasy scenario, and Superman is called in like a dog by the president to quell the rebellious fervor Batman has generated in Gotham City. This is, of course, another aspect that seemed to ask if a hero who proclaims to fight for truth, justice, and the American way is in fact morally repulsive, but Miller is no Alan Moore. The Dark Knight's tough-on-crime symbolism and moral panic results in the foundation of a new, hopeful society, while Supes is more critiqued for his obedience to the state. It sows a libertarian message of distrust for the government, but still aligned with authoritarian crime policy. There are some favorable concessions made. The parallel drawn between Harvey and Bruce presents the idea that they are the same kind of crazy. The Joker commits crime in response to Batman. Bruce's ward, Dick Grayson, has nothing to do with him in the entire comic, and maybe Miller is right that that's who Batman really would be. It's certainly a running joke in the problem that arises with the realism of the Nolan trilogy, but the ultimate implication of The Dark Knight Returns is that his crime fighting outweighs the bad. Batman hurts people. Commissioner Gordon hurts people, but the two of them lead the city out of chaos. It's posited that people with these grim, dark outlooks are troubled, but they are necessary, as is their response to crime. And not to allocate too much emphasis to the author's words over good old-fashioned textual analysis, but in a 1985 interview with the Comics Journal, Miller himself said, "I think that in order for Batman to work, he has to be a force that in certain ways is beyond good and evil. It's very clear to me that our society is committing suicide by lack of a force like that. A lack of being able to deal with the problems that are making everything we've got crumble to pieces. Batman, in my series, does not apologize or question what he does or its effects. There's a whole world out there who can argue about that, and they do, constantly, throughout the series. And the effects of what he does are tremendous. He changes the quality of life in Gotham City, the way everyone there thinks and lives. Now, presenting a vigilante as such a powerful, positive force is bound to draw some flack. But it's the force I'm concerned with, more as a symbol of the reaction that I hope is waiting in us. The will to overcome our moral impotence and fight, if only in our own emotions, the moral deterioration of our society." Frank Miller's portrayals of Batman have since fallen out of favor with general audiences. His Dark Knight Returns sequels don't receive at all the same praises as the original, and his All-Star Batman series became a meme for its cringy dialogue. Not to mention the absolute low point of the comic Holy Terror that was definitely supposed to be a Batman story about a vigilante who goes to the Middle East to kill racist caricatures of Al-Qaeda in a post-9/11 rage. Miller has since expressed some regret of the comic alongside some apologies of his statement on the Occupy Wall Street movement, but you know how that goes. Nonetheless, the absurd political statements these later stories made were largely in line with The Dark Knight Returns from the jump, just exacerbated by the nationalism of post-9/11 pop culture. However, I recently picked up Wonder Woman Dead Earth, written and illustrated by Daniel Warren Johnson, and it felt like an interesting response to the legacy of The Dark Knight Returns. Dead Earth's art style looks a more coherent rendition of Miller's, blocky, full of angular shapes and dirty lines, browns and grays, busy frames, even if just by the texture of background. Diana literally wakes up in the Batcave and adorns herself with Batman's cape and belt, but by contrast, Wonder Woman's costume, a tattered combination of red, gold, and blue, stands out against the scorcher. The comic takes a more spacious approach to paneling and dialogue than Dark Knight's detailed layouts intercut with newscasts. It's often punctuated by large, powerful images of action, and Diana's aesthetics, from her color palette to her fighting style, are bold and direct rather than lingering in shadow. Dead Earth begins as Diana awakes from a pod in the Batcave with decreased power and no memory of the events that killed the Earth. She immediately encounters the Hydra, giant, otherworldly creatures that hunt what is left of humanity. She kills one to rescue a group of people who stumbled into what remains of Wayne Manor. She decides to join them on their journey back to Camp New Hope, but they knock her out and try to sell her to the leader of the city, a man named Aiden, who enriches himself and enforces strict control over his citizens. He is nasty enough that he orders Diana be made one of his wives, but Diana wakes, fights back, and is instead sentenced to gladiator pits, where she's forced to fight a mutated cheetah. Their battle is interrupted by an invasion of Hydra, and Diana takes up arms to drive them away, at which point she earns the favor of the people, and they turn on Aiden. But ever the merciful, Diana prevents Cheetah from killing him, receiving each blow on his behalf. Aiden is in prison, where he ridicules her governing philosophy by saying, "You're crazy. No one can lead people this way. They need a strong fist, ready to crush all the unwilling." Diana rejects this idea by offering him a chance at retribution, an offer to help the effort to travel to her homeland, Themyscira. Aiden begrudgingly accepts, and with Diana in the lead, the people soon reach the mythical city. But upon investigating, Diana discovers it in ruins, and deep within, her teacher Nubia and her mother have been horrifically mutated. At which point, it is revealed that the Hydra are the mutated remnants of her Amazonian sisters from a war with mankind. Diana is rescued by Cheetah and, lost, seeks out the symbol of hope to Batman's symbol of justice, Superman. Instead, she discovers his corpse and her role in the cataclysm. Due to humanity's abysmal effects on the environment, the Amazons faced either a climate apocalypse or stopping humanity. Diana attempted to broker a peaceful solution, while Superman spoke on behalf of humans. However, war still broke out between mankind and the Amazons, resulting in humans unleashing nuclear weapons that devastated Themyscira. Diana afterward unleashed her full power on Superman in a fit of rage, and using kryptonite, killed him. Not only that, their battle resulted in widespread destruction across the globe. Superman plays a similar role to his presidential puppet position in The Dark Knight Returns here. He's so completely a protector of humanity that he doesn't do anything to stop them from unleashing nukes or perpetuating climate crisis. A superhuman who works alongside the American government is, at best, aiding and abetting imperialism and genocide. Diana's mother, Hippolyta, continues on with the goal of eradicating all of humanity, now vested in the complete opposite belief that mankind is inherently destructive and can't be allowed to live on. Her people were decimated, and in their mutated forms, they hold the goal of repaying that atrocity wholesale. Diana, in weighing her role in this situation, must admit that her undying love of humans is influenced by her status above them. She has seen their potential for violence as much as their beauty, and perhaps she had thought herself more grounded than the gods of Olympus by walking among them. But had she been more willing to take action, she might have been able to stop the war just like Superman. And in giving in to the same genocidal fury her mother now lives by, she only created more damage. Her answer then, whether she feels worthy or not, is to defend humanity, even against her own people. Because even if humans in power destroyed her home, the complete slaughter of an entire people is not an equivalent measure of justice. She then fastens Superman's Kryptonian spine, together with her lasso of truth, into a weapon, and with Batman's cowl across her waist, flies atop her scarred Pegasus to the people of New Hope, in essence taking what she can from the memory of past heroes and family. Amidst the battle, Diana is given one last gift, a device left by Batman that will restore her to full power, entrusted to a human to decide whether or not to afford her that measure of strength again. It's a decision made out of desperation, with the knowledge that only Diana can defeat the Hydra. Diana ultimately has to kill all but one of the Hydra, her mother, as she is allowed to slink back into the sea. But as she's lost one of the bracelets that dampen her powers, she'll only be able to rely on her own self-control from here on out. All the same, she does swear to fight for humanity again. And with a hand extended to the only human who knows the extent of her crimes and destructive power, asks, "Will you help me revive this dead Earth?" Wonder Woman, at her core, is a character that believes that providing human beings the freedom to develop and thrive is more effective than pounding them into submission. And Dead Earth takes its grim setting as an opportunity to truly test those values. It would be easy for Diana to enact her goals by force. At full power, even Superman couldn't stop her. But unlike the utter cynicism levied at the moral fabric of Miller's Gotham City, Dead Earth proposes that while pain and suffering can never disappear, the cruelty of the few does not outdo the sanctity of life for the whole. Diana dares to hope, to trust, to imagine a better world, and to ask the same of humanity in return. That's what makes her the strongest.